everyone, welcome to Watch It Paint It. This week, painting April O'Neil from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shadows of the Past. This was a request by Stephen on Patreon. I made the foolish mistake of mentioning to him that I've never really painted a very yellow model, so I've not experienced the massive issues with painting yellow as much as some people have done, so obviously that made him pick this model. I was just showing you there that the model, I think this model's awful quality, and that was me filling in some green stuff on her chest. She had a gap where her head's obviously attached to her body in some way. I'm starting this tutorial with Sombre Grey. It's a game colour paint by Vallejo, and that can be used straight as a primer as well as the base coat. And I've chosen Sombre Grey because what would you say, a third of this model is her jeans, so this is a nice colour for the base coat of her jeans. But I'm also just going to be painting all the dark areas as well, so any of the metallics I'm going to do in this blue as well. After that I'm going to use Bronze Fleshtone, again by Vallejo, another game colour, so this can be used as a primer as well, and I'm also using it as the base coat. And I'm going to start that for the base coat of her yellow jacket there, just applying a nice watery coat. Probably put one or two on of the yellow because, as I mentioned, the yellow's a pain to paint and it's going to take lots and lots of coats. I'm going to use Beasty Brown for the brown. She's got a couple of sort of workman shoes on, and I'm just going to base coat these in Beasty Brown, another game colour by Vallejo, so it can be used as a primer. Just saving myself 6 inches of snow here at the moment, minus 15 degrees. I made that up. I think it's minus 3 at the moment. It was minus 7 this morning. It's cold. I don't want to go outside. There's way too much snow. I'm going to use Pale Flesh by Vallejo for her skin tone, and again mainly just because it's a primer, so I'm just saving myself going outside. And I think this was the final straw. I dislike this skin colour. I dislike this paint. I find it really hard to work with, and I think this model was the straw that broke the camel's back. I almost just redid it entirely with the Survivor skin by the Army Painter. I think I'm done with Pale Flesh. I'm not going to use it. If anyone's got any tips for Pale Flesh, let me know in the comments below. Maybe I'm just doing something wrong with it, but I can never get it to look good, no matter how long I spend on it. Next, I'm going to use Cold Grey, another Vallejo game colour, and that's to paint in the strap around, well, the straps for a bag and the rucksack on her back as well. It's Cold Grey's sort of mid-range grey. It's very similar to the Filthy Suit by the Army Painter range that I use, but again, just using it so I can prime as well as do the base coat all in one. I think it's worked well, actually. It did save me a lot of time. I do like being able to have this option available to me. I'm going to use Hot Orange, another Vallejo game colour. That's to prime and base her hair all in one go, giving her a nice dark orange base coat. Claymore Blade, so this is why I painted the silvers in the Sombre Grey to begin with, because I dislike the Vallejo metallics that I have, so I wanted to use the Army Painter one, which is the Claymore Blade you see in here. So I had to base coat in something. I just picked Sombre Grey. Next, whipping out Wasted Jeans by the Army Painter. And this is just to paint those sort of knee pads patches that she's got. They're a bit darker to the rest of the jeans, so I'm just darkening it up to begin with. I'm going to use Bonewhite by Vallejo, and that's to give her the soles of her shoes there, just that they're a lightish, I think lightish brown, but I figured once I've applied some wash, that's going to darken down. Speaking of wash, let's do that next. Flesh washes to begin with, applying that to that pale flesh, so her hands, her forearms showing through a little bit. You can see some shin and her face as well. So let me know if this is where I go wrong. I just dislike pale flesh. I can't work with it. I'm going to use light tone. That's a yellowish brown tone, and that's going to be used for her jacket, and I'm also going to just dull down that bag on her back a little bit as well. I am about which wash to use on her hair, and I opted just for the light wash as well, same on the boots, but that could have gone darker on the boots and maybe the jumpsuit, the red wash on her hair. I'm going to use blue tone, that's the blue wash, and that's to apply to her denim jeans, so just darkening that down. I'm just working it a little bit to try and get it off of her thighs, which would be brighter than the rest, and just moving it around so it is settling in the recesses and automatically getting sort of a free highlight for it. After the light wash dried, I decided that didn't look good enough on the hair, so I did whip out the Jumpsuit Shader and applied that to the hair afterwards. I'm going to use Survivor Shader, which is the black shader by Army Painter, and as normal I'm going to use that to do the metallics. I think you could have applied that to the bag as well. It depends what sort of look you want. I didn't want it to be too contrasty, but it turned out looking a little bit dirty for me, whereas the black doesn't tend to look dirty. It just looks really, really dark and high contrast. So that's personal preference, what you'd like. And then I'm going to move on to highlighting. I'm going to start with a pale flesh. And I've just got a very watered down pale flesh, and I'm just applying that to the majority of the skin. So I'm just really trying to leave the shader in those recesses between the fingers, around her neck, sort of under her cheekbones, her lips, that sort of thing, and then decide I dislike it, so I make a glaze, about 10% pale flesh and then 90% glaze medium, mix that together, gets a really watery, really runny glaze that will sit on top of the paint, and I'm just trying to blend it better together, and that did fix it quite a lot, but I'm still not that happy by the end, unfortunately, so tips in the comments below, please. Sun yellows out, and that's going to start highlighting up her top. One of the billion layers that you're going to require to highlight yellow, I'm afraid. And I'm just applying this quite generously to all of the raised bits. So that's a sort of chest, those pockets she's got, the rim of her jacket as well, all of the folds in her sleeves. Both of her sleeves got plenty of folds in, quite a bit of detail there actually. And then her hood's quite detailed as well. You can get a couple of layers on there around the raised parts of the hood, and you're going to bring that out looking nicely there. And then I'm going to mix 50% of that yellow with 50% of white, just getting it lighter. I'm going to go make sure we water it down as well, build up these layers, and then I'm just going to go around everywhere I went before. I've got my insane detail brush out now. I'm painting very, very thin strokes on all of those raised bits again, just bringing it to a more realistic highlight. Cold Grey's back out. Just going to reapply that base coat. So being generous again here, as you can see, the bag's really clear in the video there that I was just highlighting the panels back up, just leaving that shade in the recesses. And then I'm going to add 50% of white to it, and again, moving back to my insane detail brush, just going to go around the very, very edges of all those panels and highlight those up, sort of edge highlighting. Claymore blade, just back to the base coat, and I'm just going to highlight all the edges of the metal on that power fist thing she's got there, and this clicky button, I don't know what that is, and it looks weird, but just highlight the edges of that too. I'm going to use a bit of white primer to paint her in a pair of eyeballs, just very, very carefully, using the model holder there to brace my hands so I'm nice and steady to paint those in. And then I'm going to dab her in 2 pupils, one in each eye, and obviously just turn that model over to get the opposite eye. One of them, if you're right-handed, you're going to be able to get to the left eye easier, and then you probably want to flip it over to get the right eye. I'm going to use tan, just a teeny tiny bit, and my insane detail brush, just to apply that to her lips. Just going to make them look a little bit more lifelike, maybe a bit of lipstick, but it's going to look a lot better by the end. Waisted jeans. So I'm not going back to the Sombre Grey. I decided that wash had just darkened this down so dark that I wanted to highlight back to waisted jeans instead. And this is my actual favourite bit of the model, and I think it looks the best bit. There's just enough sort of detail in it. She's got her pockets, she's got a fly, she's got folds in her jeans themselves, and then her thighs that would be really obviously catching the light, so they're very, very easy to highlight as well. So just, you want to be applying it to all the folds, all those places I just said, and a nice bit on her thighs where the light would be hitting quite prominently. And then going to mix in some waisted jeans with the light denim. Sorry, I'm going to mix in the light denim with that waisted jeans. Going back down to my insane detail brush, I'm just going to catch very, very thin strokes on all those aforementioned places, and just on the very, very central part of those folds. After that, I'm going to use Parasite Brown. It's a sort of orangey brown, and that's to highlight up these boots. I think this step was a too big a jump. I think it looks quite nice. Oh, you can see my glasses there. It's so weird painting. I normally wear contact lenses, and that's why I've started knocking the camera quite a bit, because I've started wearing my glasses a lot because I'm quite tired, and the edge of the glass hits the camera quite a bit, so don't know why I'm telling you that, just why not? And so as I mentioned, I think the step up was too much, so I've just used some light tone just to blend those colours in, and I applied 2 or 3 coats to that just to bring those highlights back down and make it look more realistic. I'm going to just use hot orange to highlight up the hair, just going to catch each individual strand as I can, and just bring some brightness back to her gingery orange hair. I'm going to use black for the base, nice and simple, and then I'm going to paint around the rim using the sun yellow to match her jacket, and just make it so it's more easily recognisable on the table. Same as I'm doing my turtles, they're getting a rim of their colour. You're going to need about another 1 billion coats to get this rim yellow, and if you paint too close to the bottle cap, which I did, it's going to pull off some paint when you take it back off. It only took 1 hour and 13 minutes, but I do have to say this is probably my least favourite paint job I've ever done. I think hopefully it's still a good example for how to do it, but maybe you can just do it better. If you've got some tips, leave them in the comments below. I'm still happy with it. From a distance, it's still nice, and it's better than a plain plasticky, boring grey mess, but just not in love with this one. So I think I'm gonna blame the models. I was doubting my ability by the end, but I've painted loads more since, and they all look a lot better. Thank you all very much for watching.